of ground. What we're going to try and do in this session is, because, as I mentioned, none of us have yet quite mastered the powers of bilocation, can't be in two places at once, so these are all the representatives of the different breakout sessions. And so you will definitely hear something fresh, no matter which breakout session you've been to. We're going to have a roundup of what was said in each of them. We will, if there is time allowing, have some questions from you, if you have questions from the floor to the different representatives of the different breakout sessions, bearing in mind that they might not have all the answers to everything that was said in every breakout session, so please be mindful of that. And then, of course, we'll try and see if there's any red threads, but we then also, at the very end of this session, have our closing speakers, Philippe, Armin and Joost, who will have the unenviable task of drawing everything together at the very end. So I will, as you can see the names above us here on the screen, but we have from breakout session 1, Caroline Zacharias, from breakout session 2, Torsten Geisler, from breakout session 3, Henriette Cornet. Breakout session 4 is Ingrid Sorgsmo, and breakout session 5 is Margriet van Schneidel, Schneidel. And breakout session 5 is Stéphane Duer. Thank you all very much, and apologies at the end of, as I say, a long couple of days and a lot of different names in different languages to master. Caroline, let me start with you. You can give a little introduction. You're from VDI/VDE IT, but your breakout session, what were you talking about? What were the key things that came out of it? And what specifically are the crucial elements from connected and automated mobility that bring us closer to this sustainable transport future that we want?
Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah, so our breakout session, the breakout session 1, was on sustainability and energy efficiency. And so I think one step back from your question, actually not like talking about the crucial elements of CCAM towards sustainable mobility, but starting with the crucial elements in general towards sustainable mobility. I think it has been not only in our session, but also in other sessions, broadly discussed that, towards sustainable mobility, we need to go with a combination of automation, electrification, and also shared mobility. And I guess also combined with connectivity, traffic and network optimization, and also urban planning. Then coming back to the automation part, we have been or I think it's also widely known that automation has a potential to reduce energy consumption, mainly through dynamic and efficient traffic management, but also eco-driving and real-time traffic information. There has been some studies. We have heard that in the example of San Francisco, for example, optimization of network optimization has been able to reduce the CO2 emissions by 8%. But then on the other hand, we are also discussing about additional potential energy consumptions or CO2 emissions, for example, from onboard computing or from additional hardware elements that are introduced into the vehicle. Having said that, it's not exactly clear how much we gain from dynamic traffic management towards how much we lose from additional onboard computing powers that we need. And so to go a little bit more forward into that, I think so far the emission analysis are a little bit fragmented on the side of CCAM applications. So we either see some analysis on the use case, some analysis maybe specifically on the computational additional energy that is needed. But I think towards a more life cycle approach to investigate the emissions from all levels, starting with the resources over the manufacturing and then going to the use would be very helpful to get an overall picture of the emissions and also of additional energy consumptions. Coming back to once more to the aspect of electrification, automation and shared mobility as a combined aspect, of course, in that regard, we should not forget that road transport is only one aspect of transportation. So we also need to include our new ideas into the multimodal transport system. And also with that, as I think has been also discussed widely, try to bring a big range of very diverse stakeholders together to investigate and also discuss on a public, but also on the private side, different business models towards a more sustainable development in the transportation. And then also not forget the active part of transport modes. So not forget that walking and cycling is actually also a way to go forward, and also the importance in that from the urban planning. So one final comment, and then I pass on, is that I want to, or I hope that we all agree that like sustainability is beyond any debate. So then we also need to further focus on that, not only in talking and having as kind of as a side topic, because it went along all the discussions and all the sessions. It's always, and of course, at the end we need to go towards a smart and sustainable mobility. But also to further focus in like certain research on that and, as I said, foster the collaborations in between a very diverse stakeholder ecosystem, and not only within the transport sector, but also beyond, because we also discussed some certain aspects of interlinking the transport and the energy sector, so also to go towards that and come up with combined research efforts between CCAM to Zero, and of course also the city's mission, as has been already, there was this one call already out, but maybe there can also in the technology development be more focus in that direction.
Well, it sounds an interesting discussion, and that there were no easy answers. I think that's probably clear from the nuance you're giving us. Torsten, tell us a little bit about your breakout session. What are the elements that allow us to progress towards CCAM hosting and enabling infrastructure? It should work if you hold it very close.
Yes, all right. So, thank you. Yes, we had a very lively debate, but before the debate, it was enabled with a series of presentations. In first instance, we had a gathered project marketplace, to give the opportunity to all the projects that have been started up in the last half of the year, that count into the cluster of integrating CCAM into the transport system. So on this level playing field, we have moved on with some deployment avenue, so to say. We have looked at the added value, also relating to the synergy session of CINEA, which was immediately before, on some examples of transnational research and how it complements with Horizon Europe research. The key findings of these two projects that were introduced there were a distributed ODD attribute value awareness. So that is the final term now. I was stuck in an interim term with that, okay. All right. And I think that is a good approach how, the knowledge which is distributed between different actors can be shared in the future, and we make a step up there. A second example was then a project called Lex to Vehicle, which was on the issue of bringing the traffic law to the end user and in future to the machines. So, and on that basis, we moved further down deployment avenue with platforms which reside then in the Connecting Europe facility, C roads and NAPCOR have been mentioned frequently during the 2 days. And on that basis, we had a lively panel debate, and maybe, yeah, it's a bit too high aggregated, but I'd like to make 3 points out of it. The first one, also in the panel before, here, the green and digital twin transition, yeah, that brings various infrastructures in contact, and also cooperation, yeah, be it transport, telecom, energy, yeah. And to some extent, the SECAM partnership projects take this into account, but of course, we have to intensify this collaboration. There have been also other examples quoted during the conference with the call with the city's mission and so on. Yeah? Okay. Second, consultation across projects, it is useful and important, and from the research coordination perspective, I think FAME can something or has something to offer here, yeah. And yeah, this message is out, but maybe not yet heard or understood by everyone. Yeah, that was a second finding, and the third one. Yeah, we are at the edge of an emerging ecosystem, and we have, as we do in this infrastructure topic, as such, a strong emphasis on governance issues, on roles and responsibilities, and we should make sure that the technology innovation and the social innovation go together. So,
okay.
And with that, let's stop here. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned cities, and so our next rapporteur, Henriette, is from the cities breakout group. And I suppose the question is it a given that SECAM is going to deliver all the things we hope and wish for cities? And if and how and why, then, are cities preparing? And how?
Yep. Thanks for the question. And first, I would like to mention that I was not the moderator of the session. It was Susan Hoadley. So I'm replacing her here, but she helped to compile all the notes together. And yeah, I will do my best to convey her message. So regarding how SECAM can contribute to positive impact on sustainability in cities, what we discussed during the session is that it really depends how it is regulated, and I think that's where city can play a role. We have to align on how this regulation should look like. A good example that we often mention is the e-scooters or this e-shared bike that came, you remember, some years ago, and were all over the cities. None of the European cities want the same, with fleets of AVs that will come to the city completely on a uncontrolled manner. So we need to think together about regulation. And there was a very good presentation regarding the AV readiness of cities. It's a tool that was developed in the Coexist project. And the question here, and no, not the question, but the way they address this AV readiness is very integrated in the SUMP, the Sustainability Urban Mobility Plan of cities, and we see a very strong connection. So it's not SECAM for the sake of SECAM, but it's really, is it contributing to an overall vision, sustainability plan of the city? And here I think it's very much aligned with your session, Caroline. I can see a lot of points having this shared mobility, which I thought was in the cities at least a given, but considering the presentation we had before, I'm not sure anymore if it's so much a given that in the cities SECAM should be shared. But yeah, yesterday at least in this breakout session we agreed on that, and we see really SECAM as a part of the overall mobility system, so topic of also multimodality and so on. Another way that SECAM could contribute towards sustainability is not think of huge investment in infrastructure for the physical and digital infrastructure. I know from some cities that have been in contact with UITP that
ask me what do they need to put in place for deploying CCAM, and how much would it cost, how much do I need to have sensors on all my traffic lights, and so on and so on. We need to reassure cities that they can make it like incrementally. They don't need to make huge investment from the start. It can come step by step. And also there is a lot that exists already. The cities have already a lot in terms of physical infrastructure, for example, dedicated lanes for public transport. They have some curbs, some place for pick-up and drop-off points that maybe can be shared between public transport or new mobility services, automated services. And from the digital infrastructure, we had the case, we discussed together during the session a case where, for example, cities have, or public transport authorities or operators have already an on-demand service that exists, that is for now manually driven by, there is a driver waiting that someone is asking for a service, like a ride-hailing service, like Uber, you can imagine. And the public transport operators, for example, it was the example of Frankfurt, it's integrated within the public transport systems that they want to deploy this on-demand service in some area of the cities where it will be too expensive to put a fixed bus line, too expensive and also impossible in terms of having like these large vehicles. That's why they have smaller vehicles with a driver waiting to be called for a mobility service. And for them, having already the booking system in place and so on was already kind of a step towards automation. So let's take what already exists and make little step, and no need for huge revolution in terms of infrastructure for the cities toward like having the full potential of CCAM.
Thank you very much. I'm glad already that you're drawing some synergies with Caroline's breakout. Ingrid, your breakout group was on empowering society, and I think we'd like to hear about what use cases are feasible and useful to build inclusion, and that can mean many different things, while at the same time driving towards these quite strict decarbonisation targets by 2030.
Well, I'm afraid I will not have the answer to that. We had a multifaceted discussion around this topic. I had a very good panel that helped us along. And in Swedish we say spretig. It's when it's like this and sort of not as aligned as this, but it's when it's multifaceted. And I think we have covered several aspects. What is very interesting to hear is what you just said, Henriette, about do we have to invest in all these things? How much do we? That was one question that came up here. What can we actually do with what is available now regarding inclusion and decarbonization? But anyway, as you say, inclusion, if we first take that, we had a Slido poll on what that means, and the big words that came up in the word cloud was accessibility, affordability, equality, and equity in transport. That is what means inclusion. It was also stated that inclusion, it is actually not an end state, it is a process. And I think this element of time was something that went through our session. While inclusion is not it is a process, the same was actually said for jobs, which is one inclusion factor that we did discuss. How do you, if you think about CCAM and the effect on jobs, we often talk about all jobs that, in the hype time, we used to talk about all jobs that would be created thanks to CCAM. Then there is also discussion about what jobs will disappear due to automation. But they won't disappear tomorrow. There is some time to prepare for that and to do retasking and to define roles and also attract people to those roles that may be more of human support. So this is still not the use case, but it's sort of a use case, but maybe not in vehicles. Another aspect of time or speed is that we talked about use cases with 30 kilometers an hour as an enabler, not just that it is so slow that, for example, shuttles are so slow. It's actually one good thing with not being faster than that is that technology can mature and develop. So that is one way to take advantage of that. Obviously, that is not a good use case for a rural, to get more people to go with these types of vehicles, should they be available in the rural context. Decarbonization was one aspect in our session, and there the element of time is that even if we do roll out CCAM, we need to be faster, because CCAM per se will not take us to decarbonization, and we have to be much faster if we want to reach the decarbonization targets with the help of CCAM. And it can only happen if we deal with shared transport, if the vehicles that are used are shared. And in order to enable that, we cannot just speak about business cases, we have to talk about public cases. I think that was one new word for me that I think is useful to bear in mind. And use cases, we need to make studies on services as well. If you take shared services, we may actually have use cases that look into shared services, but we don't focus enough on the service side here. Other concrete suggestions, there were some concrete suggestions for use cases. One was to look into UVAR and CCAM as a combination, and those are the urban vehicle access regulations. And to put CCAM into a system, as was suggested here, and then also develop diverse menus of versatile alternatives for personal cars, so that people can access jobs, schools, and care. Finally, I think my time is up, and I apologize because we just ended like 9 minutes before this session, and it was very much good discussion. But I think one thing to bear in mind was said by one person in the panel, that the use cases don't need to be easy, they need to be worth it.
That is a very nice takeaway. So that's a sound bite right there. Thank you very much, Ingrid. And we do appreciate the last three. The first three speakers have had a day to think about what they're going to say, and the last three have had 8 or 9 minutes. So we know it's a tough challenge. Margaret, let me come to you. You were talking about software and hardware. Now, Ingrid there mentioned automation and concerns about jobs. When one of the things we also spoke about in one of the earlier sessions today was about edge computing and so on. So tell us about the impact of emerging technologies like edge AI on CCAM, and then how that's going to work with the needs of people, of citizens, of urban planners or rural planners, so that we don't have a sort of a disconnect between what's possible and what we want to happen. And also, one last question, because I have lots of questions for you. I'd be interested to know, did you focus more on the software side or the hardware side?
Oh, so a lot of questions.
Yes, because it's a really interesting session.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was quite an interactive session and a lot of points to discuss. And at some point we concluded that we needed another 2 hours. But yeah, okay, it was a bit hard to organize that. The impact of the enabling technologies and their revolutions that are ongoing, and the kind of almost explosion of AI and the related technologies, we have heavily discussed that and said that their integration into our mobility system, into our vehicles, is really a challenge that we're not ready for yet. So we really have to work, for instance, on the skills that we have there to make that actually happen. We also discussed on how edge AI, to mention the word, can influence the intelligence we have on board of mobility means, but also on the roadside. So create collective intelligence, combining intrinsic and extrinsic intelligence. But we need to combine the interfaces of hardware and software towards advancing levels of collective intelligence to make that happen. So there you go, we discussed not hardware or software, but really the combination of the two. So I ticked that box in answering that question already. And with the advancing levels of AI, there are more and more models on board, and they need to be integrated into the design cycle, but also in the overall life cycle of our mobility means. They need to be trained, they need to be tested, they need to be validated. And the validation approaches that we are currently developing, for instance, in the Sunrise project and other initiatives, we need to develop now in a way that they can accommodate those future developments as well. And that is heavily going to influence the way that we work. And the way that we work and the way that we work about is also a question like, can we bring the new technologies, they can bring huge advancements towards the overall mobility system. And I think some issues were mentioned already by previous speakers. The overall optimization beyond safety, comfort, the overall system, they play a key role there. And that's the point that we said we need another 2 hours to dive deeper into that. But there was another topic that we wanted to discuss really, and that is also indeed, as you mentioned, how is the relation to the end user and how do we see that? So we can't dive only into technology, we need to know the user of it. So the human-centric approach is essential to make it a success. And then you have keywords that we all know, but we found out we sometimes have a different understanding of some of those words like explainability, trust, cooperation. How do we actually see that? So we need to work on that. And then we came across a picture which I really liked. If you talk about human-centric developments of CCAM, you have the human in the center in our new ecosystem and a new way of thinking. And then you have around it a couple of new blocks, which are not rocket science, but it can change the way we think and approach. Like the citizen or the public, you have the tech developer, you have the legislator, and you have researchers. And they all should do the thing that they are supposed to do in their role. It's very hard for us to take several roles in this ecosystem, and it's blinding us for some of the things that we are needed to do. So that ecosystem, I hope that also afterwards, and I really pity David Storrow, who has to do the reporting to really catch this picture. But that's one of the takeouts that we have to work on a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan, you were talking about use cases. And of course, with use cases, we've got all these expectations of positive impacts and benefits that we want to see. To what degree are the use cases we're testing up to those challenges or expectations? And also, what then are the next steps?
Yeah, indeed, that's to build on what also Ingrid said. So, is the use case worth the challenge? Actually, is it worth solving? Is the use case worse? So, is it actually worth solving the challenge for these different use cases? And that's exactly what the session was about. So, we wanted to understand first from presentations on the different examples of use cases on why they are being looked at and why they are being tested or demonstrated at the moment. So, we looked at first at the automotive manufacturers' experience, where definitely they are building this based on customer needs. So there's a clear why, it's to address these customer needs. Then we looked as well at these highway or automotive use cases from the perspective of the ADS regulations that are being developed, and they are focusing on two specific use cases for highways as well, like the L4 hub to hub, and then L3 highway as well. And there, the motivation is because they are closest to the market, but already there we identified clearly that in order to achieve the expected impacts, these ADS systems needs to be integrated into the CCAM in general and the overall mobility system. Then another important use case we discussed is the freight and logistics, and in particular the long haul, where it's clear. The motivation there to have automation, because it's a very challenging sector with many inefficiencies. So in particular related to driver shortage and as well difficult working conditions. And here we looked at the example of the MODI large-scale demonstration project, which is exactly having this long haul demonstration on a corridor to identify the challenges and then to be able to find solutions to these different challenges, which include, for example, cross-border, so the different transitions as well from the closed areas to the public areas. And then we went on to the shuttles, so the urban and in particular the rural use cases, which have the most promising, which look to be the most promising for the societal impacts in particular. And I think then in the discussions, I mean, we looked at the different challenges, and I think the one challenge that was clearly mentioned is harmonization. So there is the ongoing harmonization on type approval and on legislation, but what is the challenging is to have is to balance these needs as well of the harmonization needs with the needs from the different stakeholders. So balancing the different interests is definitely a key to the success. What we also discussed is that beyond the harmonization that now ongoing is the path to the commercialization. And it was mentioned that there is, in order to, it's not because we don't have a driver in the vehicle for him, but there needs to be a complete rewriting of all the regulation architecture. And then I think that the topic that is clearly close to my heart is also the need to have common definitions and sharing of information. I mean, we spoke about how do we define these different use cases. I mean, all the different presentations were speaking about the use cases, but we clearly saw that there are different ways to define them. So we need a common approach to define these use cases, and also how to address them, because for each of these use cases, there are different risks. And for example, authorities, for them, it's very important to be able to mitigate these risks. So having, for example, a common catalog of use cases and as well the identification of the associated risk is very important. And then this brings us to having as well an evidence-based. So how do we collect evidence for these different use cases and the KPIs? Because this is needed to create the trust that we need. And yeah, I think to conclude, what was also mentioned is that a lot is happening. We have a lot of different pilots, and these pilots need to build on each other. So we need to maybe start step by step. We have small tests with limited use case, and then slowly we build on them, we extend, and we build this complete use case. So I mentioned now the different use cases going from automotive to long haul, etc., etc. I mean, we need really to be able to slowly learn from each and then build in the end a common knowledge and share it. So that's
Well, thank you. I have to say, a complete rewrite of regulations strikes fear into the hearts of many here in Brussels, but it's a point we're taking away. It's quite difficult to find a single thread through everything that all of you have spoken about, but I suppose if I'm seeing one thing that seems to be coming out from all the different breakout groups, it's an increased need, or perhaps a focus for collaboration, and by that I mean, or communication, and that I mean in the broadest possible terms. I don't simply mean public and private, and by public, the lawmakers at EU or national level, or the road authorities at national level, and private, not simply the vehicle manufacturers or the telcos or the technology companies, but also by bringing the public in as well. So could I ask, just a multiple choice question, a little, a lot, or not at all? Did that come through in your breakout group? If I could ask each of you, starting Caroline with you, was this idea that people need to be talking to more, it needs to be more joined up, was that one of the themes?
Yeah, so yeah, in our breakout session, as I mentioned before also already, I think one big point was that for including potential CCAM applications into the wider transport system is very important, as you said, like to combine discussions between public and private entities and make it a bigger collaboration.
Thorsten, in your group, a little, a lot, not at all? Really?
I would say a lot, and it is about what is in it for me, yeah? But if that is safe, yeah, how can I help my neighbors?
Henriette, is that the sense you're getting as well? I mean, over these whole 2 days, we've talked a lot about this.
Yeah, I mean, from the city perspective, of course, it's about having a system that works for everybody. And if it is with SECAM, if it is without, let's see. But we need this collaboration together to find out what's the best way.
Ingrid, I suppose in your group that's a no-brainer. It was about empowering
Absolutely,
society.
that was one of the presentations was from the Sinfonica project, where the whole point is really to co-create and to involve the users, and the users may not only be us, you and I, going with transportation or buying transportation, but also businesses and not least those who are going to deploy the things, the public sector.
And Margaret, I mean, your group, I mean, are the technology companies involved in this? Do they need to be brought into the fold more, or are they already having a loud enough voice?
Well, we did absolutely discuss the collaboration. It was not the main point of our discussion, but I think it was a clear willingness and a clear indication that these industries are already collaborating, and they will continue to do so. They have to, with all types of actors. Yeah.
Stefan, you mentioned the word communication, which is, a prerequisite to collaboration. Do you think we're at the right sort of inflection point?
Yeah, it's a no-brainer as well in our session, definitely. As I mentioned, we said we need to build these common catalogs and these common definitions, and this can only be done with all the stakeholders. And as well, to put everything in the wider CCAM and mobility picture, we need indeed to have everybody involved.
So anyone in the room got questions that they want, burning issues that need answered at this point, late point, 5 o'clock in the day? Our panelists are here. You have them at your disposal. No questions? No hands going up? I see some quite tired faces. All right, I'm going to ask the audience a question. Right, if you're not going to ask one, you'll have to answer one. Via show of hands, how much do you agree with that last comment, that communication and collaboration is needed? Those who think a little? Those who think not at all? Yeah, no one. And those who think a lot? Okay, well, I guess that's what the last 2 days have been about, so you can all pat yourselves on the back. Well done, you've already taken a step to answering one of the challenges. I think, thank you very much. A round of applause to the hard work of our rapporteurs. And I am going to invite onto stage now. You can see the names behind me, so you know who you're about to meet. Arman Greta, again, leader of the division strategy of autonomous driving at BMW Group and the CCAM Association chair. Joost van Tom, I'm going to invite you up as well. Joost, CEO of Ertico, and Philippe Froissart, head of unit from the Future Urban and Mobility Systems Clean Planet Directorate and DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. So, gentlemen, I think we can stand, grab a microphone. Armin, I don't know if you want to go first. Who would like to go first? Oh, we can stand. No, we're sitting. Yeah, it's energy.
All right, energy. So I will start then. So, do you want to start? No, it's okay. Do you know how you measure the success of a conference? That's a question to you.
I usually get people to fill out the form at the end that you will all be sent. There's a feedback form.
My answer would be by the number of people that stay at the closing session. And I think this is quite a successful event because, I mean, yesterday the auditorium was full, admittedly. We had more than 650 registration for that event. And there are still quite a number of you still left to hear us till the bitter end of the conference. So I think it's certainly a success. I will take the opportunity of this meeting here, this closing session, to give a few thanks to a lot of people, starting with you actually, Jennifer, because you have been very good as a master of ceremony, moderator. You managed to go through the different sessions effortlessly. So you asked all kind of tricky questions to speakers and members of the different sessions, so that's very good. That's also a sign of a successful conference. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you as participants for the EUCAD conference because you have been very active, very much interested in the different sessions. And I'm also looking here at the participants coming from outside Europe because there are quite a few of you that are actually not from Europe. And I think this is important because the EUCAD conference admittedly is a European conference, otherwise we would not call it EUCAD. But it is a conference with an international dimension. And we want also to interact and collaborate with actors from outside the EU, particularly in the domain of CCAM, which is a very international sector. So I would like also to thank my colleagues, because they have been organizing very well this conference. I'm not going to name them, because if I forget one name, I will be dead. So they know who they are. I will thank them after the conference. I would like to thank also the colleagues from CCAM, the colleagues from FAME, because they have been very active and very good at for the organization of this event. I would like also to thank, and these will be the last persons I will thank, the colleagues from EUCAD, because the event yesterday night at the Auto World was fantastic. What was nice, I thought, with this event was not only the champagne and the alcohol that was served there, or the biscuits, but the fact that there was quite many exhibitors, projects that were working in this domain of connected and automated mobility, and that was an opportunity for the participants really to share this information, to exchange with the projects that were present. And I think in the future, we will maybe talking about EUCAD2025 at some stage, but in the future, I would like to see that kept in future editions of the conference. Now, coming back to EUCAD23, I will tell you a story. I started actually in this unit, Future Urban and Mobility Systems, 4 years ago, on the 1st of May 2019. And the first conference I attended was EUCAD 2019. I was very impressed because the room also was full. This was the same room here. And what struck me was the enthusiasm, the dynamism, the excitement that was in the room because of the subjects that were touched upon. And there was clearly a big push for CCAM at the day. Then we had EUCAD 2021, which was organized, unfortunately, as a remote event for the reasons that you know. There was also a lot of interest from the community, from the sector. And one of the key issues that was made and that was discussed extensively in the EUCAD 2021 was the societal acceptance, the user adoption of the CCAM solutions, which I think, and you know, as it is also mentioned here today through the discussion in the different sessions, it is essential for CCAM. And then came EUCAD 2023. So what I'm going to say is, don't take it badly. I think there was less excitement, but which is probably the sign of maturity of the sector. Because the issues that you have been addressing today and yesterday were clearly the sign of a sector that has reached a level of maturity where we are looking more at mass deployment, where we are looking at regulation, at standards, and that means that we are going in the right direction. Having said that, there were two schools of thought, really, that were emerging from the discussion yesterday and today. Those of you that call for mass deployment of CCAM solutions already now on the ground in cities, in different countries. And those of you that are a little bit more cautious, and I take the words of Armin yesterday saying that we have to walk step by step. One of your colleagues in the Volvo group also said that we should not move too fast when it comes to the deployment of CCAM solution. And I think the two arguments, the two views are not incompatible, and they should be heard, and they should be acknowledged. Yesterday, there was a word that was mentioned and that was used, which was island of opportunities. I think there are clearly island of opportunities for the deployment of CCAM solutions, mass deployment of CCAM solutions, but we need also to be very careful when we do that, and we need to make sure that the solutions that we deploy are safe. Another pearls of wisdom that I picked up yesterday was the fact that we were referring to pool of knowledge, and the fact that we need more testing, more pilots, more demonstrators that will fill this pool of knowledge before we become convinced that we can indeed deploy the solutions on the ground. And I think this is something which is important in the context of CCAM, because CCAM will provide this testing, these pilots, these demonstrators, and will be able to give greater confidence to the end users for the deployment of the CCAM solution. And I think that's all I wanted to say from my side. But I will come back on 2025.
You want to thank the Academy? Yours.
Shall I continue? I'm standing between now and you're leaving fully automated and fully connected, of course. Indeed, Philippe, I was in day one and the EUCAD #1 edition, also in this room. Some of you were there. And what we discussed there was indeed enthusiasm, was a lot of energy, a lot of new topics. We didn't play music at the time. We just looked to each other, we watched each other, yeah. What is happening here? Artificial intelligence in market didn't exist. We didn't talk about it. ChatGPT, no way. So, and then we started with working groups, with breakout sessions, and then the dynamics came. With my article team also, it was really great. And what we delivered today is a regulation on automated driving systems from 2022. We delivered connectivity through 5G corridors. We delivered also short-range connectivity potential. We delivered a mobility data spaces, plural. We delivered a lot of things. Shuttles, we delivered a show project, we have Phoenix, all these nice projects. We should be proud. We should be proud on what we do in Europe. and we should export some of these things. We can learn a lot from our friends from the US. I think Jane was very clear on that. Our Japanese friends as well and others. We can learn, and we should maybe put it in a knowledge tool of Stefan. I know he liked to make the publicity, my friend, on the knowledge base. So we did a refresh of the knowledge base. Now here is a question. Who is playing music here? Who is playing an instrument? I do? Yeah? Okay, right? We should come together and make music as an orchestra. Not individuals playing their own thing, not the private against the public, transport, etc. And I'm very much expecting a good thing from the multimodal digital mobility services regulation, where they are able to put these things together, to have data sharing and have a seamless journey, as we say. So let's play this orchestra for the next EUCAD conference in 2 years. Also, be pleased also to have Klepper yesterday. We didn't mention that, but Klepper was organizing the exhibition downstairs, you remember? Some of you remember. The nice reception yesterday and the tour upstairs, thanks also to the CCAM Partnership and Association. And obviously, Move, Connect, Grow and RTD, a great cooperation with your team, Philippe as well, thank you. And Stefan and Julie, especially from my team in Urtico, they did a great job in being a bit the shadow behind all the organizational logistics. So again, thank you. Join me in Lisbon at our European ITS Congress, 22nd of May, which is very much approaching. It will be a great Congress, see you all there. And now, thank you again for being with us. Thank you.
Joost, I think, is that you volunteering to lead this boy band in 2 years' time? We're going to hear you. I mean...
Thank you very much, Philippe and Josta. I don't know what to say beyond that. So it's the bad side of being the third speaker, but having the famous last words is also a good opportunity. So thank you for having that. And I'm very happy to have contributed a lot. And I'm especially wanting to thank one group which was not mentioned yet, but it's not official group for this conference. It's the executive group of the CCAM Partnership. The association, there's really 7 cluster leaders and 7 co-leaders who are doing a tremendous job, very professional, very experienced. Very much thank you for that. Some of them are sitting in the last panel here. So it's really a pleasure to work with you, and I'm very happy to continue on that. And I'd like to mention 2 other points which are from my perspective, really the core of the discussion, even if they were not always present. I'd like the word from Caroline about sustainability beyond any debate. That's very obvious and clear. And also the discussion yesterday about Oslo with a sense of urgency was a very good input and a very good picking point to, let's say, all these more mature things which go slow, but will end to something. But in parallel, we have this urgency necessary, and so it's good to look at the opportunities which are where are the early birds where we can really pick and make big progress. At last, I'd like to say again some advertising. We will have on 4th and 5th in July 2 big events, important events. So we have the CCAM Partnership having their General Assembly annually with a physical attendance. And on the 5th of July, we have the EUCAD 20 years of anniversary. So I think this is something 20 years, not 2017. So it's a long way to go. And this also brings me back to this sustainability point, because we are working very well and very good together in the office. And I'd like to thank the office again here with EUCAD Into Zero and CCAM. So thanks.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know everyone's had an information overload at this point at the end of 2 days. I can see people probably don't want me to tell anything else, but remember the hashtag EUCAD2023. You can continue the conversation beyond today. There will be a feedback questionnaire sent out, so watch out for that in your inbox. And I'm going to ask everyone have a big stretch now, because it's been a long 2 days. Hands up in the air, big stretch. And now pat yourselves on the back, because it's been hard work. Well done, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.